President Bola Tinubu has just signed the Electoral Act 2026 amendment into law, and after weeks of intense protests, heated debates and accusations flying back and forth, the drama has finally come to an end, with the president putting his signature on the controversial bill on Wednesday evening, February 18, 2026. The signing ceremony took place at the Presidential Villa in Abuja around 5 p.m., with principal officers of the National Assembly in attendance to witness this historic moment that has divided the nation for weeks. Just one day before the signing, the National Assembly had passed the final version of the bill after months of contentious deliberations, and now that it has officially become law, the protesters who have been camping outside the National Assembly complex demanding real-time electronic transmission of election results directly from polling units to the Independent National Electoral Commission's result viewing portal can finally pack up their placards and go home. The battle over this Electoral Act amendment has been absolutely fierce, with civil society groups, opposition parties, and ordinary Nigerians staging daily protests under the banner of Occupy NASS, demanding that the law must include mandatory real-time electronic transmission of election results directly from polling units to the Independent National Electoral Commission's result viewing portal. These protesters, including prominent figures like Omoyele Sowore and former Rivers State Governor Rotimi Amechi, have been accusing the National Assembly of deliberately weakening the electoral process to create loopholes that would allow manipulation and rigging during the 2027 general elections. The protesters referenced the massive failures during the 2023 elections when INEC's results viewing portal collapsed at critical moments, leaving Nigerians unable to verify the accuracy of announced results and triggering widespread allegations of electoral fraud. The controversy centered specifically on Clause 60 of the bill, which deals with how election results should be transmitted from polling units to INEC headquarters. The House of Representatives had initially passed a version that mandated real-time electronic transmission, meaning that immediately after votes are counted at each polling unit, the results would be uploaded electronically to INEC's central server, where everyone could see them instantly. This was exactly what civil society groups wanted, because it would make it nearly impossible for anyone to tamper with results during the transportation and collation process. However, the Senate had a completely different position. Senators rejected the real-time transmission requirement and instead passed a hybrid approach that allows for both electronic and manual transmission depending on whether there is network connectivity in the area. If you have been following this electoral reform drama and want to understand exactly what was signed into law and what it means for the 2027 elections, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, because we are going to break down all the implications and keep you updated on how this new law will actually work in practice. The version that President Tinubu signed into law is essentially the Senate's position, which means electronic transmission is allowed but not mandatory, and in areas where internet connectivity fails, the signed Form EC-8A, which is the manual result sheet, will become the primary source of election results. This compromise has left many Nigerians dissatisfied because they believe it creates room for manipulation. Critics argue that if officials can choose to use manual transmission whenever they claim there is no network, then what is stopping them from deliberately sabotaging electronic systems in areas where they want to manipulate results? The protests outside the National Assembly were intense and sometimes violent. Police fired tear gas at demonstrators on multiple occasions, creating chaotic scenes as people ran for safety. Opposition lawmakers also staged dramatic walkouts from both chambers of the National Assembly to protest what they described as a betrayal of electoral integrity. Minority Leader of the House of Representatives, Kingsley Chinda, declared that his caucus could not support any clause that creates room for manipulation, rigging, or any untoward act. He revealed that the minority had proposed that where there is conflict between manually collated results and electronically transmitted results, the electronic version should prevail, but this proposal was rejected by the ruling All Progressive Congress majority. Even former INEC resident electoral commissioner Mike Igini publicly begged President Tinubu not to sign the bill, warning that it could cause chaos during the 2027 elections. Igini argued that removing the mandatory real-time transmission requirement would undermine the credibility of the entire electoral process and make it easier for desperate politicians to rig elections. Despite these warnings and the ongoing protests, President Tinubu went ahead and signed the bill into law, effectively ending the debate and making it clear that the hybrid approach of electronic and manual transmission is what Nigeria will use for the 2027 elections, scheduled for February 20 for presidential and National Assembly elections and March 6 for governorship and state houses of assembly elections. Make sure you are subscribed and have notifications turned on because as we approach 2027, we will be monitoring how this new Electoral Act works in practice and whether the fears of manipulation will come true or whether the system will deliver credible elections. One interesting aspect of the amendment is that the National Assembly also adjusted the timeline for INEC to announce election dates. Originally, the law required INEC to give 360 days notice before elections, but this was reduced to 300 days after lawmakers realized that the 360-day requirement would have caused the 2027 presidential election to fall within the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, which could affect voter turnout and logistics. This change shows that the lawmakers were at least thinking about practical considerations even while they were fighting over electronic transmission. FCT Minister Nyesom Wike weighed in on the protests, taking shots at opposition leaders like Rotimi Amechi, who appeared at demonstrations. Wike mocked Amechi for showing up with his doctor son claiming to treat injured protesters, but without bringing any ambulance or medical equipment. Wike accused opposition figures of opportunism, saying that when they are in office, they enjoy power, but when they are out of office, they suddenly become the voice of the people. He described the protests as transactional and defended the Tinubu administration as focused on purposeful leadership and difficult reforms.